Two corrupt officers strutted into the courtroom, radiating an air of invincibility. Smirks plastered across their faces. They moved with the arrogance of men who believed they had outsmarted the system. Their uniforms gleamed, their badges polished to a deceptive shine, a stark contrast to the shadows of their deeds. As they took their seats, one of them leaned over to the other and muttered, "This is just a formality. They'll never touch us." The courtroom was packed. Spectators murmured in hushed tones, a palpable tension crackling in the air. On the stand sat a man, stoic, his presence understated yet magnetic. He was the one they had tried to bury, a man wrongfully accused, his life turned upside down by a web of lies spun by these very officers. But his calm demeanor was unnerving. He wasn't broken. He wasn't defeated. He seemed prepared. The prosecutor's voice echoed through the chamber, outlining the accusations that had been leveled against him. The defense lawyer's rebuttal was equally compelling, painting the officers as untouchable heroes of the force. The jury's faces were a blend of skepticism and confusion, swayed by the carefully constructed narrative. For the corrupt officers, it was going perfectly. And then the moment came. The judge's gavel slammed down, the sound reverberating like a drumbeat of finality. The verdict was read, not guilty. The officers' grins widened, their laughter low and conspiratorial. "Told you," one of them muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. But the man they had framed? He stood up, slowly, deliberately, every motion calculated. The room's collective attention snapped to him. Gone was the air of defeat they'd expected. In its place was a quiet confidence that sent shivers down spines. He reached into his inner jacket pocket, a move that made the room tense for reasons they couldn't articulate. And then he pulled it out, a badge, but not just any badge. Federal gold, real, gleaming. The weight of its significance hit the room like a tidal wave. "My name is Director Anthony Rhodess," he said, his voice even, his words deliberate. "FBI." Gasps rippled through the room. Eyes widened. The officers, once so smug, now looked like deer caught in headlights. Their confidence drained in an instant. The laughter that had bubbled in their throats died, their grins evaporating like mist in the morning sun. "In this case," Rhodess continued, stepping forward, his gaze never leaving the two officers, "it isn't over. It's just beginning." For a moment, the courtroom was silent, utterly silent. You could hear the ticking of the clock, the shuffle of feet, the collective intake of breath as the weight of those words settled in. The judge, usually composed, blinked in astonishment. The jury, confused moments ago, now looked at the officers with suspicion, their earlier facade crumbling under the intensity of Rhodess's revelation. The officers scrambled, their arrogance replaced by frantic denial. "This is a mistake," one of them blurted. This isn't." But their words were disjointed, their protests weak. The courtroom watched as the realization hit them. Their secrets were no longer safe. Rhodess's voice cut through their sputtering. "Gentlemen, you thought you could manipulate the system, bury the truth, and walk away unscathed. But you forgot one thing." He paused, letting the moment stretch, the suspense hanging like a guillotine poised to drop. "The truth has a way of surfacing, and when it does, it's relentless." The room was riveted. Rhodess's words had transformed what seemed like a closed case into the opening act of a far more intricate story. He turned to the judge, his tone respectful but firm. "Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to introduce new evidence." The judge, regaining composure, nodded. "Proceed." Rhodess gestured to an agent at the back of the room, who stepped forward carrying a briefcase. The agent sat on the prosecution's table, opened it, and revealed a series of documents and photographs. The images were damning. Clandestine meetings, envelopes exchanged under the cover of darkness, accounts that didn't add up. "These," Rhodess explained, "are records of illegal activities involving the defendants, bribes, falsified reports, coercion, and most importantly, the evidence they suppressed to frame an innocent man." The courtroom was electric. The jurors leaned forward, their earlier confusion replaced by outrage. The spectators murmured, their whispers growing louder with each revelation. The judge called for order, but the atmosphere was charged. the gravity of the unfolding events too much to contain. The officer's lawyer jumped his feet, his voice shaky. Objection! This evidence was not presented during discovery. It's inadmissible. Rhodess's gaze locked onto him, calm yet piercing. This evidence was gathered during an ongoing federal investigation. The defense had no right to it because they are the subject of said investigation. Your objection is noted. Now sit down. The lawyer faltered, his confidence shattered. He sat, his face pale. Rhodess turned back to the courtroom, his voice steady. These men thought they could operate above the law. They thought they could destroy lives and emerge untouchable. But justice doesn't bow to corruption. Justice is relentless. The officers shifted in their seats, sweat beading on their foreheads. Their polished facade was crumbling, replaced by the raw panic of men who knew their time was up. Rhodess wasn't done. He approached the bench, his steps deliberate. Your Honor, the FBI has reason to believe that these officers are part of a larger network of corruption. This trial is just the beginning. As we speak, warrants are being executed, accounts are being frozen, and every shred of evidence is being brought to light. These men will face justice, and so will anyone who aided them. The judge's expression was unreadable, but the weight of the revelation was evident. Director Rhodess, he said, his voice measured, you've turned this courtroom into the epicenter of a federal investigation. Proceed carefully. Carefully is the only way I proceed, Your Honor, Rhodess replied. The corrupt officers sat frozen, their world unraveling before their eyes. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of shock and anticipation, every person hanging on Rhodess's next words. This isn't just about these two men, Rhodess said, addressing the room. This is about a system that allowed them to thrive. This is about accountability, about ensuring that those who swore to protect and serve are held to that oath. The fight for justice is never easy. It's messy, it's grueling, and it's often thankless. But it's necessary, and it's happening. Now! The officers were led away in handcuffs, their earlier arrogance replaced by fear. The courtroom erupted in applause, the sound echoing like a thunderclap of justice served. Director Rhodess stood there unflinching as the weight of his words and actions reverberated through the room. This was only the beginning, and everyone knew it.